A very good evening, aspirants. Welcome to the Hindu News Analysis by Shankar IAS Academy for the date 17th February 2021. These are the list of news articles chosen for today's analysis. It has been provided along with the page numbers of different editions of Hindu newspaper. Let us start the analysis with this first news article. Now, this discussion is based on this editorial article which talks about telehealth. In this editorial, authors have discussed the need for telehealth, about the need for adopting shared medical appointments in telehealth. And in this regard, they have also talked about the eSanjeevani platform. So we'll discuss these aspects in this analysis. The syllabus relevant to this discussion is given here for your reference. Now, before talking about the need for telehealth, let us know what is telehealth. Telehealth refers to the delivery of healthcare services to patients where patients and healthcare providers are separated by distance. So this telehealth uses information and communication technology, that is ICT, for the exchange of information. And this exchange of information is for the diagnosis and treatment of diseases and injuries. It is also used for research and evaluation, and it is also used for the continuing the education of health professionals. Now, this telehealth can contribute to achieving universal health coverage by improving access to quality, cost-effective health services to patients who could be literally anywhere. And these telehealth services are particularly valuable and helpful for those in remote areas, and it will be helpful for vulnerable groups such as women and children, and also for the aging populations. So what is the need for telehealth in the current scenario? We know that the pandemic has disturbed the healthcare and other essential services. Even the World Health Organization has noted that during the early months of pandemic, many essential services were disrupted in majority of countries, and among them the most widely affected services were immunization, antenatal care and other childcare services. Moreover, almost the entire health system was focused only on handling and fighting against the pandemic, and as a result of this, there was lesser attention to patients of other ailments or the patients of non-communicable diseases. So patients who require services other than COVID services were not attended by healthcare professionals. And mainly these patients comprised of elderly populations and other vulnerable groups, and they chose to stay at home fearing the contraction of the infection and also because of the lockdowns. So their healthcare needs could not be attended. That is why authors have noted that lockdowns and fear of transmission have dampened demand for non-emergency care. So that means there was demand. But since the patients were not able to come physically to hospital due to COVID concerns, this resulted in an unmet demand. So what happens when such healthcare demands are unmet? It increases the chances of adverse events happening to those kinds of patients. See, there are several diseases that require routine follow-ups and consultations. And because of the pandemic, all such follow-ups were stopped, and it increased the chances of adverse happening to these patients. And such events certainly required hospitalization also. And this hospitalization at these adverse events led to even worse outcomes in the case if the patient had COVID-19 infection. And the example for this could be the cancer care, as it has been broadly affected in many countries. And this is also the case with the diagnosis and treatment of other non-communicable diseases as well. So, how to prevent and handle these exigencies? How to have routine follow-ups in spite of lockdowns? How to have doctor consultation despite the long distance between the patient and the service provider, that is the healthcare professional? And then how to bridge this gap? We already have a solution to this. We have the support of information and communication technology for the exchange of information for the diagnosis and treatment of diseases and injuries. And this is given by the telehealth. So telehealth was highlighted by the experts in health sector to handle the issues faced by health system amidst the corona crisis. Additionally, telehealth also helps in saving the transportation costs, and it also reduces other challenges associated with the transportation. Telehealth is contactless and it is also risk-free. And this is where we have a national teleconsultation service at the national level, which is called as the eSanjeevani OPD. OPD stands for Outpatient Department. This eSanjeevani OPD is a stay-home OPD, which is based on the eSanjeevani platform of Government of India. See, eSanjeevani platform is a flagship telemedicine technology which is developed by the Center for Development of Advanced Computing in Mohali in Punjab state. It is a program that is being deployed nationally for the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And it is being deployed at more than 150,000 health and wellness centers under the Ayushman Bharat scheme of Government of India. So based on this, the eSanjeevani OPD provides a citizen-friendly web-based national teleconsultation service, and some of its features are patient registration, e-prescription, free service, etc. And these are some of the other salient features. We have given it here for your reference. Additionally, note that in December 2020, this eSanjeevani telemedicine service has crossed 1 million teleconsultations. That is 10 lakh teleconsultations. And these are the top 10 states with highest consultations through eSanjeevani platform. So we can see that this is a significant breakthrough in the health sector. But there are certain challenges associated with telemedicine. That is, there are criticism that the consultations are conducted for short duration of time. So as a result of this, some of the patients are not satisfied after the virtual interaction with the doctor. Also, there is an urgent need to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of every minute that is spent in virtual care interactions. Therefore, to address these challenges, the authors are suggesting a technique in patient management services. And this technique is the remote shared medical appointments, or in short RSMA. So it is a type of appointment. In such appointments, there will be multiple patients with similar medical needs. They will virtually meet the doctor at the same time remotely, that is without physical contact. Also note that even though the patients have similar needs, each individual will receive individual attention. But such meetings are not private. And in normal cases, these appointments are like a group counseling, as you can see in this picture. And when this shared medical appointment is virtual, that is when RSMA is used, then it will be like a group WhatsApp video call or audio call. So these are stated as some of the disadvantages of SMA or RSMA, but there are also some advantages to this method of appointments. First advantage is that it enables peer support and peer-to-peer learning. And the service providers who have offered SMAs have found them to improve both productivity and also outcomes for many conditions such as diabetes, glaucoma, etc. The participants in such appointments are also found to have developed supportive bonds, since such sessions also enable sharing of local knowledge. Additionally, the participants clarify their doubts in a group and the entire group gets benefited. Then it is also found that the patients who choose to attend an in-person SMA often like the experience, so they return for more sessions like that. In addition to this, when SMAs are applied for specific ailments, then such sessions are efficient and effective compared to the short duration individual personal appointments. So these are some of the advantages of SMAs which also apply to RSMAs. So this is one of the methods using which we can rapidly expand the digital health services. So these are some of the points that you should take note from this editorial article. Now let's move on to the next discussion. This discussion is based on these two news articles which talk about sedition. So in this discussion, we will see what is sedition and some of the case laws that dealt with the topic of sedition. So in this regard, this first news article is about a young climate activist who was arrested by Delhi police. The climate activist is Disha Ravi, and she has been arrested in a case law which is now being termed as Farmers Protest Toolkit case. See, toolkit is simply a term used by the activists to represent their campaign information document. So in this case, Greta Thunberg, who is the Swedish climate activist, initially shared a link to the toolkit on the farmers' protest, and this toolkit is allegedly contains some pro-Khalistani elements. As you know, Khalistan movement generally refers to the Sikh separatist movement that aims for a separate Sikh state. The accusation put by Delhi police on Disha Ravi is that she was the editor and a key conspirator behind the preparation and dissemination of the toolkit, which is alleged to be seditious in nature. So in this regard, now a former judge of Supreme Court has said that based on the publicly available content of the toolkit, it does not amount to sedition. So let us see why he has noted this point and on what basis, and for that we need to understand what is sedition. See, sedition, it is covered under section 124 capital A of IPC. And under this section, sedition means whoever by words or by using signs or even by visible representation attempts to bring into hatred or contempt or even attempts to excite disaffection towards the government established by law in India, then these kinds of acts will amount to sedition. Now under this section, such an act shall be punished with imprisonment for life plus fine. And recently we are hearing many instances where the sedition law is often used, but know that even in the pre-independent India, this section 124A IPC was extensively used to curb political dissent. For example, if you take Jogendra Chandra Bose example, he was charged with sedition for criticizing the Age of Consent bill and also for talking about the negative economic impact of British colonialism. And then if you take the Queen Empress and Bal Gangadhar Tilak case, in this case Tilak was accused of sedition for publishing an article in the newspaper named as Kesari, and in this article he talked about the Maratha warrior Shivaji to encourage the overthrow of British rule. And because of that he was accused of sedition, and after this sedition was also a hot topic in the Constitution Assembly of India. But if you see, you cannot find the word sedition in our constitution. It is because it was intensely opposed by the Constituent Assembly. Now you may think that sedition is contradicting our fundamental right of speech and expression, which is covered under Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A. See, this article guarantees freedom of speech and expression to all citizens, but however, this freedom is subjected to certain restrictions, and these restrictions are in the interests of sovereignty and integrity of India, and in the interest of the security of the state, and in the interest of friendly relations with foreign states, and also for maintaining public order. This freedom can be curtailed. But unfortunately, we can see that the Section 124A is misused by government to suppress dissent. And this is where the 1962 case law becomes important, because it provided where to apply this Section 124A that deals with sedition. See, this case law is the Kedarnath Singh versus State of Bihar case, in which the validity of Section 124A was challenged. But in this case, the constitutional bench upheld the validity of this section, but in turn it limited its application to certain acts. And these acts include intending to create disorder, or intending to disturb law and order, or even incitement to violence. So if the acts mentioned under Section 124A of IPC will create all these, then it will amount to sedition according to the Supreme Court. And based on this only, the former judge noted that the toolkit that is available publicly does not amount to sedition, because it does not disclose anything to indicate that there is any incitement to violence. Now, stating the same reason, another individual has also been granted bail by Delhi High Court. This is covered in this news article. And in this case, Delhi High Court has noted that there is absence of any exhortation, call, incitement or instigation to create disorder or disturbance of public peace by resorting to violence. So since all these are absent, the sedition law cannot be invoked against anyone. And finally, High Court also warned that a powerful tool such as a law of sedition cannot be invoked just to silence the agitated people. So these are the points that I should take note from these two news articles. Now let's move on to the next discussion. Now this news article talks about the safety system at airports. And particularly this news article talks about the technology called as the Engineered Material Arresting System. So in this discussion, let us see what this news article says and also about this technology. The syllabus that is relevant to this discussion is given here for your reference. First, let us see what this article is about. See, this article talks about a response sought by the Supreme Court from the Centre on a petition regarding the safety systems at airports. This is because in the past we have had flight crashes that were devastating, and these took place due to the lack of adequate safety systems. And the example for such flight crashes could be the 2010 flight crash that occurred when an Air India plane from Dubai overshot at the tabletop runway at Mangalore airport, and it plunged over a cliff into a wooden valley, as you can see in this picture. And similarly, last year also, another Air India flight from Dubai overshot the runway in Karipur airport at Kozhikode, and after this it plunged down the slope and broke into two pieces. And one of the reasons for the crash of these aircrafts is because of the nature of the airport that is built, or the runway that is built. That is, these airports are built in a tabletop runway fashion. So what is this tabletop runway? First, you should note that what is a runway? A runway is a rectangular area on a land aerodrome in which the landing and the takeoffs of the aircrafts will happen. And a tabletop runway is that runway that are constructed at the top of plateaus or hills. So they will have steep drops at one or both ends, and such runways are generally dangerous both for landing as well as for takeoffs. And this is mainly because they can cause illusions for the pilots. See, it is often said that they create optical illusion, especially when the vision is affected by torrential rain. Now, because of these reasons, such airports demand an extra cautious approach with no space for errors both in landing and in takeoff. And note that India has got 6 airports with tabletop structure. They are the Lengpui Airport in Mizoram, Mangalore Airport in Karnataka, and then Pakyong Airport in Sikkim, and then the Shimla Airport and Kulu Airport in Himachal Pradesh, and then the Karipur Airport in Kozhikode. So now, because of the accidents or the crashes that has happened, a petition has been filed in the Supreme Court stating that there has been deliberate omission on the sides of Ministry of Aviation and the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, as they failed to install the Engineered Material Arresting System, or in short EMAS. These systems can stop the aircrafts from overshooting runways, especially at the vulnerable airports like Kozhikode and Mangaluru. Because we just now saw that these airports are vulnerable due to their tabletop models. Now the petition is stating this because this EMAS system was brought to the knowledge of the Airport Authority of India and also the Civil Aviation Ministry along with the DGCA way back in 2008 itself. But still no proper steps were taken for the installation of EMAS, and which is one of the reasons why another accident occurred last year. So based on this petition, now Supreme Court has inquired about the delay in the installation process in spite of being aware of this technology. So in this context, we need to know about this technology. As we already saw, EMAS stands for Engineered Material Arrester System. It is also called as an arrestor bed. It is a kind of ground arresting system that is used to prevent the aircrafts from skidding over the runoff areas. It is generally built in tabletop airports, and it also built at the airports where the full runway safety areas cannot be obtained. See, a runway safety area is a surface surrounding the runway which is prepared for or which is suitable for reducing the risk of damage to airplanes when there is an event of undershoot, overshoot or excursion from the runway. Thus, when this runway safety area cannot be obtained in any airport, then also EMAS can be built in that airport. So what is this EMAS made of? It is a system that uses a specially installed surface which is made up of crushable materials that will quickly stop any aircraft that moves on it. This surface is placed at the end of a runway in order to stop an aircraft from overrunning. When we say overrun, it means a situation when the aircraft takeoff or landing extends beyond the end of the runway. So this surface prevents overrunning, and it is used to prevent the human injury and to also ensure minimal aircraft damage. Now this crushable material which we are talking about is what is the engineered materials, which is mentioned in its name, EMAS. And these engineered materials are absorbing materials with high energy, and they have selected strength that are reliable and predicted to deform under the weight of an aircraft. And according to the countries that use this system, the engineered materials should possess certain characteristics, and these characteristics include water resistance, non-sparking, non-flammable, and they should not be physically vulnerable to vermin, birds, wildlife and other creatures. Also, such materials shouldn't promote combustion, or they should not emit toxic fumes in an fire environment, or they should not also support plant growth. And most importantly, the materials should be UV resistant, and they should exhibit constant strength and density within a given temperature range at all climatic conditions. Apart from these characteristics, the materials are also expected to be resistant to deterioration by salt, aircraft fuels, hydraulic fuels, lubricating oils, blowing sand or snow, paints and herbicides. So these characteristics of the engineered materials are very important because they are going to stop a whole aircraft which is full of passengers and crew members. Now how does it work? See, while landing, the tires of the aircraft will sink into the lightweight material that is used in the specially installed surface, that is in the engineered materials. And as the tires rolls through the material, the aircraft will be decelerated. That is, the speed of the aircraft will be reduced due to a loss in the energy that is required to crush the EMAS material or the engineered material. Now the installed surface is usually located end of the runway or beyond the end of the runway, and this EMAS usually begins from a setback distance from the end of the runway, and this distance is subjected to change with respect to the area that is available and the materials that is used in the EMAS. Say for example, in cases where the area is longer than the required area, then the standard EMAS will be set up far away from the runway end. This is because placing at such a distance will reduce the possibility of damage that are caused by short overruns. Now here we have a video for you that will show you how this EMAS works. note that the performance of EMAS depends on the weight of the aircraft and also its gear configuration while landing and also on the tire pressure of the aircraft. And further, this EMAS is a passive system. That is, it doesn't require any external agent to initiate or trigger its operation to arrest an aircraft. It will do the job when an aircraft moves over it. So in short, what are the benefits associated with this EMAS technology? First, it improves the safety in cases where the landing is not available, or it improves the safety at places where it is not possible to have a standard 1,000-foot overrun. Further, a standard EMAS installation can also prevent an aircraft from overrunning the airway even if the aircraft is running at a speed of approximately 80 miles per hour. And also it helps slowing down or stopping an aircraft that overruns even if the length of the available runway safety area is less than the standard length. So that means whatever might be the criterias or the nature of the airport, this EMAS technology will help to stop the overrunning aircraft. And if this system was already known to the government and still it did not install it, that means it is actually a deliberate omission on the part of the government as cited by the petition. So now let us wait and see what Supreme Court decides on this matter. So these are some of the points that you should take note from this news article. Now let's move on to the next discussion. Our next discussion is based on this news article which talks about a stay imposed by the Securities Appellate Tribunal on SEBI's order. That is the Securities and Exchange Board of India. See, SEBI has ordered a 1-year ban on the chairperson of Future Retail and other promoters from the securities market. And now this order has been stayed by the Securities Appellate Tribunal, which is the news today. So in the light of this article, let us see about this Securities Appellate Tribunal, or in short SAT. It is a statutory body established under the provisions of SEBI Act of 1992. It has been established under the section 15K of this act. Its main function is to hear and dispose the appeals that are filed against the orders passed by the SEBI or the orders passed by an adjudicating officer under the Act. And it can also hear and dispose the appeals filed against the orders issued by the Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority and IRDAI. I note that SAT has got only one bench which sits at Mumbai. The tribunal is deemed with the powers to regulate their own procedure, including the places at which they shall have their sittings. Now what about its composition? It consists of a presiding officer and 2 other members, and all of them are appointed by the central government. Now the presiding officer will be appointed by the central government in consultation with the Chief Justice of India or a person nominated by the Chief Justice of India. Now coming to the qualifications of the presiding officer, she should be a sitting or retired judge of the Supreme Court or a sitting or retired Chief Justice of a High Court, or she should be a sitting or retired judge of High Court with not less than 7 years of service as a High Court judge. Then only she can be appointed as a presiding officer of SAT. Now the tenure of the members and the presiding officer is 5 years and they are eligible for reappointment. However, the maximum age till which the presiding officer can hold office is 68, and for the members it is 62 years. And note that the members of the board can be removed only through an order by the central government on the grounds of proven misbehavior or incapacity. And the tribunal is vested with the same powers as that of a civil court under the Code of Civil Procedure of 1908 when it deals with a suit related to these matters. And further, a person who is not satisfied with the decision or order of the tribunal can file their second appeal directly to the Supreme Court within 60 days from receiving the order. So these are some of the points that you should know about Securities Appellate Tribunal. Now let's move on to the next discussion. Our next discussion is based on this news article which mentions that Dr. Kiran Bedi has been removed from the position of Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry. And in her place, the Telangana governor has been given additional charge of Union Territory until regular arrangements are made. So in this context, let us discuss about the Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry and the powers exercised by a Lieutenant Governor. The syllabus that is relevant to this discussion is given here for your reference. First, note that Part 8 of Indian Constitution deals with the Union Territories and it contains Article 239 to Article 241. Even though all the Union Territories belong to one category, it should be noted that there is no uniformity in their administrative system. But every UT is administered by the President, who acts through an administrator appointed by him. So we can say that an administrator of a UT is an agent of the President and not head of the state like a governor in a state. And the president can specify the designation of such administrator, and the designation could be lieutenant governor or even chief commissioner or even just administrator itself. So at present, this administrator is known as lieutenant governor in the case of Delhi, Puducherry, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Union Territory of Ladakh. And this administrator is called as just administrator in case of Chandigarh, then in Dadra and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu, and then in Lakshadweep. And here you should note that among these union territories, the Union Territory of Puducherry and Delhi are provided with legislative assembly and a council of ministers headed by a chief minister. And now the newly created Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir will also have a legislative assembly. And today our focus is on the Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry. Before that, you should understand the uniqueness of Puducherry. See, the territory of UT of Puducherry comprises of the former French establishments in India, and there are 4 such French establishments. They are Puducherry, Karaikal in Tamil Nadu, and then Mahi in Kerala, and then Yanam in Andhra Pradesh. The French handed over these territories to India in 1954, and subsequently it was administered as an acquired territory by the Union of India till 1962. Then it was made a union territory by the 14th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1962. But then in 1963, the Parliament enacted the Government of Union Territories Act. Now this act created a legislative assembly and council of ministers headed by a chief minister for the UT of Puducherry. And the union territory will be administered by the President of India through an administrator according to the act. And these provisions were created as per the 14th Constitutional Amendment Act, which inserted Article 239A to the Indian Constitution. Now let us see some of the powers of Lieutenant Governor as per the Government of Union Territories Act of 1963. See, the section 44 of the Act deals with Council of Ministers and its working. According to it, the Council of Ministers headed by a Chief Minister will aid and advise the administrator, and this aid and advice will be given while the administrator exercises her functions in relation to the matters with respect to which the Legislative Assembly of the Union Territory has the power to make laws. Now, the same clause also allows the Lieutenant Governor to act in her discretion in the matter of lawmaking, even though the Council of Ministers have the task of aiding and advising her. So that means there could also be a difference of opinion. Now, when there is a difference of opinion between the Lieutenant Governor and her ministers on any matter, the administrator or the Lieutenant Governor is bound to refer that matter to the President for a decision. And then the administrator has to act according to the decision given by the President. But however, the administrator can also claim that the matter is urgent and take immediate action as she deems necessary. Now then, under Section 23 of the Act, it is obligatory on the part of the Union Territory Government to seek the recommendation of the Lieutenant Governor before moving a bill or before an amendment to provide for the imposition, abolition, remission, alteration or regulation of any tax. This is also required when there is an amendment of the law with respect to any financial obligations undertaken, and it should also be done in the case when anything that has to do with the consolidation fund of UT is considered. So in all these instances, the recommendation of the Lieutenant Governor has to be sought by the Union Territory Government. And most importantly, note that the Legislative Assembly of Puducherry can make laws on any subject under the state list and under the concurrent list. Now, once the Assembly has passed a bill, the Lieutenant Governor can either grant or withhold her assent or even reserve it for the consideration of the President. She can also send it back to the Assembly for reconsideration. But still note that the Parliament can make laws on any of the subjects including the state list. Though the Union Territory of Puducherry has an elected legislature and Council of Ministers, the control of Parliament and President over it remains the same. So these are some of the points relevant to the examination regarding Union Territory of Puducherry and the power of Lieutenant Governor. Now let's move on to the next discussion. Now we have come to the last session, the practice questions discussion session. Now this first question is based on glaucoma. First statement is, it refers to a group of eye diseases that can cause vision loss and blindness by damaging a nerve in the back of the eye called as the optic nerve. This statement is correct, and this disease is what is called as glaucoma. See, during the telemedicine discussion, we saw that the shared medical appointments are particularly helpful in handling ailments such as diabetes, glaucoma, etc. And based on that only we have framed this question. And here note that people belonging to different regions suffer from different types of glaucoma, such as people of Asian descent are much more likely to suffer from angle closure glaucoma, while those of African or European origin are more likely to develop primary open angle glaucoma. Now the second statement is, there is no cure for glaucoma, but early treatment can often stop the damage and protect the vision. This statement is also correct. There is no cure for glaucoma. and which is one of the reasons why this is one of the conditions that require regular follow-up and taking prescribed medications. And this was affected during the pandemic. So here the question asks for the correct statements, and both the statements are correct. So the correct answer is option C, both 1 and 2. Now this next question is based on Lieutenant Governor of Puducherry. It is a two-statement question. First statement is powers and functions of LG of Puducherry are mostly enumerated in the Constitution of India. This statement is incorrect because the powers and functions of LG of Puducherry are mostly enumerated in the Government of Union Territories Act 1963. Now the second statement is LG cannot act in her or his discretion in the matters of lawmaking, and she or he is bound to adhere to the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers in this regard. Now this statement is also incorrect because according to the section 44 of the Government of Union Territories Act of 1963, even though the Council of Ministers headed by Chief Minister will aid and advise the administrator, but the LG can also act in her discretion in the matter of lawmaking. But the question mentions as LG cannot act in her discretion. And here the question asks for the correct statements, but both the statements are incorrect. So the correct answer is option D, neither 1 nor 2. Now this next question is based on Securities Appellate Tribunal. First statement is it is a constitutional body with a similar function as that of the Lok Adalat. See, as you know, Lok Adalat is a forum where the cases or disputes which are pending in a court or which are at pre-litigation stage are compromised or settled in an amicable manner. So we can say that Lok Adalat is another alternative in judicial justice. But during discussion we saw that Securities Appellate Tribunal only hears and disposes the pleas filed against the orders of SEBI, PFRDA or IRDAI. And also it is not a constitutional body, a statutory body established under the SEBI Act. So the whole statement is incorrect. Now the second statement is the Chief Justice of India acts as his presiding officer. The statement is incorrect because its presiding officer is appointed by the central government in consultation with the Chief Justice of India, and a sitting or retired Chief Justice of High Court can be appointed as presiding officer, or a sitting or retired judge of Supreme Court can also be appointed as the presiding officer. So this statement is also incorrect. Now the third statement is its members are eligible for reappointment. Now this statement is correct. We saw that the presiding officer and the members are eligible for reappointment, and here the question asks for the incorrect statements. 1 and 2 are incorrect, so the correct answer is option B, 1 and 2 only. Now this question is a direct question based on EMAS, that is Engineered Material Arresting System. The question is, recently EMAS was in the news. What is it? Option A, technology for waste management, a solar power technology, technology for preventing aircraft overruns, and American anti-missile system. And the correct answer is option C, technology for preventing aircraft overruns. Now let us take two mains questions based on GS paper 2. You can answer these questions and upload in the comment section. With this, we have come to the end of today's Hindi News Analysis and Practice Question Discussion session. If you like the video, don't forget to like, comment and share. And do subscribe to Shankar IAS Academy YouTube channel for more updates related to civil service examination preparation.